Welcome back everybody, I'm Prakash, your trainer for this entire series. In this series of your C programming, we are going to talk further regarding all the theoretical concepts that you need to make it first clear or strong so that it will be easy for you to continue with your studies in a term of your C programming language. So in the previous video, we discussed about the compiler. So please bear with me because we have a lot to discuss in theoretical portion before we jump up to the practical, because without having the proper understanding of all those prerequisites in order to understand the C programming language or to be able to write a program in C, you are going to be in a big trouble. Why? There are many things that you need to understand for C. I could take you straight away to the programming. Okay, to write a program you're using so many statements, okay, control structure, your array and all, but that will not be that much fruitful until and unless you understand everything from the zero. Okay, now in a previous video we discussed about the compiler. So the meaning of this compiler, we have understood that it's going to translate the program that you have written in your own language, that this program is going to translate into the machine readable form. But you need to understand there is another one technical term over here in terms of the C programming. That means there is a one big word that you need to understand, the meaning of linker. I have seen many students that they seems to have a good knowledge of the C programming, but when we talk about the linker or the object file or the source code, they feel hesitate to even answer. Why? Because that was some sort of lack of the proper information actually regarding the C. So let's discuss about the meaning of the linker first. Okay, now normally what happens that whenever you write a program, all the source code, it has to be converted or changed into the executable program. Okay, so actually this process takes place in two stages in C programming language. Now, number one, it's known as a compiling, and number two is known as a linking. You might have seen that you write the program, you run it, you find the output, you build the program, okay, you run, you find the output, it's over. There is nothing to think about it. But trust me guys, there are many things working behind the scenes. So I want you all to understand that so that you can be a good programmer in the days to come. So we saw that the process takes place actually in two stages. One is compiling and second one is linking. Now let's see the meaning of this compiling and the linking. That means there comes the use of the linker. Now compiler performs the basic translation from the C statements into machine language. That means when the set of instructions are provided, okay, in a form of your C programming language, so there is a compiler that we have already seen that works as a translator. So simply it's going to translate that one. But what about the output that you obtain after the compiler has worked out? So that's known as an object file actually. And in addition to this machine level language instructions, that object file has information to add the linker. That means there are many object files. So whenever you run the program, you build it, you run the program in order to obtain any kind of output, trust me guys, there are many object files. Okay, we produce, or this C program is going to make many object files. Now the work of this linker is to combine all of those different object files to produce the actual executable file. That means it's not the compiler that is able to produce the final executable file. So that's been done by the linker, because it is clearly said or stated over here that the linker combines the different object files to produce the actual executable file. So these are the things you need to understand first if you want to form your base strong. Now after this we are going to talk about few more things. These are all mandatory. That's a preprocessor. Have you ever thought yourself or asked yourself that when you write a program and you run, or you build and run, and if I tell you that before you build and before you run, processing task has already started, you might be thinking, how is this possible? But this is the format. Okay, so that's why I'm going to talk about the preprocessor. Now, in previous page, actually, to be honest, we saw that how compiler and linker interact with each other in order to give you the executable file. Now, actually, before compiling, a process called pre-processing is done actually on the source code. That means whatever source code you are going to write, processing has already started before you build it. So that is known as a preprocessor actually. Have a look over here. You might have seen the header file all the time in C programming language, or it might be in C plus any programming language. You might have seen that there is always on top has include stdio.h, has include conio.io.h. There are so many header files. It's not only these two, we do have many more actually. Now, if you have a look over here, if I write has include stdio.h, what is the meaning of this? Actually, this line is nothing, just a preprocessor directive. That means it's going to process the C program before the compiler. It sounds odd. It sounds, amazing for you all that. How is it possible that before the compiler has started, the preprocessor has already started to perform its tasks? It is true. All lines in the program beginning with a hash. You might have seen that whenever we write a program in C or C+, it starts with the hash. Okay, this itself is a preprocess. That means processed by the preprocessor. So anything you write that start with the hash, that will work as a preprocessor. That means before the C program is being translated, or before you obtain any kind of processed data in a form of output, actually that work has already started processing that by preprocessor. Now, the hash include directive causes the preprocessor to effectively insert the stdio.h file actually into the C program. So when the compiler compiles the program, it sees contents of the stdio.h followed by the rest of the program. Now you see what I'm saying, followed by the rest of the program. That means it's not the code, or it's not the program that you're trying to find it out, that is written after void main. That means after stdio.h. So first it has to be processed, or it has to be pre-processed whatever is written along with the stdio.h, and which is supported by the hash include. So this is your preprocessor. That means, again, I would like to tell you that before your compiler compiles the program, before your compiler try to find it out any kind of object file, there is a one preprocessor that has already started processing your tasks. So that starts with hash include. That means anything you write that's been started with a hash include or the hash, simply say the hash, you should understand that it's a work of preprocessor. Okay? Now then, let's talk about some of the other important things that you need to understand in order to start writing a program. Don't worry, by 1 or 2 more videos we'll be able to come to the level of writing a program, just because I want you to make the things clear, so that by the time we start writing a program, you do not get stuck anywhere. Now, you might have been doing the programming, or you might have done in your previous classes. So let's say it might be in 10 or 9 or 11 or any classroom activities in this computer science, you might have gone through a word that we call a variable. Of course, I guess you have made the right statement that variable is simply a temporary location in a computer memory that holds the data temporarily. That means variable refers to an entity that has its value and that can change anytime the programmer wants. So variable definition actually associates a memory location, because I already told you that variable means it's a temporary location in a computer's memory that holds the data on temporary basis. So that's associated with a name, and that we call a term over here as a variable name. So a variable can have only one value assigned to it at any given time during the execution of the program. That means, of course, we can change the value of this variable. So that's why it's known as a variable, whose value can be changed during the execution of the program. Don't forget that it's not always the value that you have been assigned in C programming is a constant. It can be changed as per your requirement. So if I have to give you the simple example over here, S is equals to 20. In a general concept, in a, to the lowest level of understanding, I should say that S is the variable. So S variable is used to store our data, that is 20. Okay, now the next thing comes over here. Variable must have a name. You cannot occupy any space in a computer memory in order to store any kind of value without occupying that space holding certain name. So there must be one name to store the value. So that's why we need to have the proper declaration of the variable in C programming before you start writing a program, or before you start storing any kind of value. You might be, used to with writing a program in a grade 10 or 11 using other this programming language rather than C. But trust me guys, here in C programming language, variable must be declared before using them. Otherwise, it's not going to work. Okay. Now, so let's see how you can name a variable. Okay, variable names are usually identifiers used to name the variable. That means any word, any letter can be used in order to, term as a variable. They can be taken as a symbolic names given to the memory. See, the whole thing is about the memory only. Anything is stored in this computer, it goes in a memory. Even with the C also, it's the same thing. Okay, now given to a memory location which are temporary in nature. I told you that. Okay, before only I've already informed you, I told you clearly that variable is stored somewhere on a temporary basis. Okay, and it consists of a sequence of the letters. Of course, when we used to, store any kind of value with the variable, so what is that now? Nothing, sequence of letters. It might be the number sometime, but you need to understand over here that variable name must begin with an alphabet. Of course, it can be supported by any kind of symbol, or let's say over here in our case underscore. It can be supported. There is no issue on that. But the variable name, whenever you write a program in C programming language, in order to store or process any kind of value, that value must be stored in a proper ruled or protocol followed variable name. Okay. Now, before writing a program, I mean to say before executing any value, the variable must be declared. Variable all sense, the type of data along with the variable name must be declared in C programming language. So while writing a program in a C programming language, you are always required to declare a variable and its data type. That means it's not only about the declaration of the variable, you need to make sure that data type, that means what type of data you are going to store in your C programming language. If you have a look over here in a syntax, okay, it's saying that type and variable name. Type, what type of data you are going to use. If you have a look over here, right hand side as an example that I have given over here, int, that means user is going to store or data, integer type data. That means without having any kind of decimal value present. That means there is no dot. Okay, the value after dot will not get stored because you have already declared over here you are going to store a value in an integer variable. So first you need to declare a data type and then only you are going to give a name of the variable, name of that temporary location where you are going to store the value. So after that you can initialize your value into, that means you can initialize your variable along with the value. It is up to you. Okay, it depends upon your need now. So now if I have to talk about some of the rules actually over here in order to declare a value in your variable, it is simply given over here. A variable name can have alphabets, digits and underscore. If you have a look over here, I have used a underscore, see, student -id. So because the variable name can be supported with the alphabet, digit or even underscore sometime. It is up to you. So if I would like to give the simple example of the valid variable type over here, variable and its type, I have written int cd2. Int means what? You are declaring the type of data you are going to use. That's been associated along with the variable. Now cd, this is a simple name of your variable, temporary location in a computer's memory, and it's been followed by a number. If you see the rule over here in the second line, it has clearly mentioned that a variable name can have alphabets along with the digits as well. So that's why int cd2, this is allowed. Okay, but if you think of starting a variable name with a number, that is invalid. So that's why it is not allowed. Because you see guys, before you start writing a program, the first thing you need to understand more than all the header files and all, I guess it's a variable and the data type. So that's why whenever you declare a variable in a C programming language, that variable actually follows the same protocol that you have used in a grade 10 actually. That's a variable name must begin with an alphabet and it can be supported by a symbol or even the number. So that's why the second option is actually incorrect. So that's why I have given cross. Now, let's say another one rule, okay? Another one rule. Because we do have a rule over here. Now, variable name must not be reserved word. Don't forget that also. Remember the keyword. We have a keyword. We have almost 32 keyword in C programming language. I think that is also another one reason why it's quite popular. Just not because we are having the less number of keywords. It's because the powerfulness of that keyword. So if I have to talk about another one rule of assigning a value into a variable using a C programming language, your keywords are not allowed. That means reserved words are not allowed. That means char, that indicates the character. So if I say that I would like to use the word char as an integer variable, that is not going to be accepted. So that's why I have given a cross. So if you say the last one, it's trying to say that white space is not allowed in a variable name. That means this is the same rule, guys. See, I'm telling you, this is the same rule that you have done in your grade 10 so far, I remember. In a Q basic also. What do we do now? Blank space, that we call often over here white space. So whenever you assign a value into a variable, you are not supposed to provide any kind of space in between the variables. So this is the same thing over here. Whereas you can use the symbol that we have already discussed. So variable name, it can be supported by the underscore, but variable name cannot be a keyword. Okay. Then we have the basic data type. Of course, we are almost at the gate of process of writing a program in C programming language. So that's why after talking about the variable and the rules for declaring a variable in your C programming language, I do believe that you need to know crystal clear about the types of the data, same like other programming languages. So if I have to talk about the data type that's been supported with the very powerful C programming language, we have almost 4 over here. Char, it is for the character. I hope you do understand the meaning of this character. And int, this is used for the integer. If you would like to store a value having the decimal place value, that we call a floating point. So for that, we have a data type as a float. Okay, now if you would like to have a double precision, that means more than a 6 to 7 decimal place value. If you have, remember in your QBasic or some other this programming language in a previous grade, now double precision is also there. That we simply term as a double, not double precision. We can understand the meaning of this is simply a double precision, but as a keyword, in order to specify over here as a data type, we use a word double. So double means double precision floating point number. And float means a single precision floating point number. Okay, so these are the data type that you also need to know. And we have another 2 things over here, identifiers and the keywords. You need to understand this as well. Okay, identifiers, sometimes we call it symbols also. These are the names that used to supply, for variables. There are 2 types of identifiers in your C. Standard identifier and user-defined identifier. So these are the things we are going to do slowly in your upcoming this videos when we start practically writing a program. Now another one we have already discussed, in a shortcut way, that is the keywords. So keywords are predefined. These are the words predefined. They are having the specific meaning in C programming language, which you will not be able to modify the meaning of that. So these keywords are, or in some way we can also say ready-made program actually. Okay, so these words help us to use the functionality of C language. That means I talk about 32 keywords, it means that only. Okay, they have special meaning. All the keywords that we use in C programming language, they do have special meaning which you cannot modify actually, to be honest. If you are planning to modify the meaning of those 32 keywords permanently in the C programming language, that's not possible. So there are altogether 32 keywords in C. Okay. Now let's see at least the structure of C program. We have almost reached to the gate of starting the process of writing a program, but this portion we are going to talk or keep limited up to the theory so that it will be easy for you to understand. Now over here, if I say structure of C program, so how does it look like? How you are going to write? Okay, what will be the body format? What will be the header format? So if you have a look over here, I have simply divided into 2 sections. Number 1, standard include statements. Remember, preprocessor has include stdio.h. That means hash itself indicates I am a preprocessor. Now before the compiler does its tasks, I have already started processing this one. Okay, so that is a standard include statement. That means any C programming language you see, or any C programming language written program, I mean to say that those programs must start with the hash include, because it's a preprocessor and it's trying to say include this function. That means standard input output. Okay, and the H indicates the header. After that we have a main function. That means it's not just because of the header file that you are able to obtain any kind of your desired output. It is because of the main function also. That means the body part. If you want to take it as an example of your web designing, you might have been doing a coding in HTML or CSS or JavaScript or anything. There also you might have a body format. That means the body, that's the main function. That's the main part of the coding. That means anything that you would like to execute in your desired output format, that has to be done in the main function. So over here, if I talk about the structure of C, we have two. Number one, standard include statements. That means that declares a kind of a preprocessor. And the second one is the main body function, where you are going to write a program. If you can see over here, it has clearly said that printf hello world. So this is the simply body part actually. So whatever statement you would like to execute in your C programming language, that has to go in a main function only. Okay. Now last for a day. Okay. For now, let's talk about the header file. This is the setup rule actually. It's a protocol you cannot deny now. Okay. It's a kind of syntax actually. Now, if I talk about the header file, the first line that you write itself, I do believe you understand the meaning of that. It's a header file because that gives the clear-cut picture which are the keywords to be used, how the data is to be processed. Okay, entire things are defined by the header file itself. Now, if I see first one, hash symbol. Remember, preprocessor. As soon as you write hash, program processing task will start. And the second one, include. That means you are trying to say, please include this preprocessor in order to work with the header file. So over here, header file can be anything. Okay, like in a previous file, page, you might have noticed I have written stdio.h, stdio lib. It can be anything. It depends upon you. Okay, so now these were the theoretical portion which I wanted you guys all to know. So in our next video, I do believe that we'll be having few minutes of the theory, and then we'll start with the longest journey, another one long journey of C programming language. This is the very powerful this programming language, and each one of you, if you would like to stay in the world of information technology as a student, as a professional, I suggest you all to be familiar with C so that it will be helpful to you. Okay, so if you find it fruitful, please do like and subscribe. Thank you.